Now we'll finish up the last section for the layout. Those who know my modeling know that I don't like flat boards, and I avoid the flat board look. So I'm always looking to create various terrain, various levels to break up that flat board look. I heard a guy at our last big train show say something I liked. He said, it's called plywood desert. And I'm not into plywood deserts. So you can see that already I'm starting to create some topography. And even though it's only 16 inches, I wanted to have some interest. And one of the things that you'll find I'm always fond of is water. And so I've created this little canal harbor, which will be kind of an interesting focal point when you walk in and start to look at the layout. You'll also see that I'm starting to try to figure out track. I don't do track plans. I just kind of create needs and try to get track to satisfy. My first scene on this module was the cement plant. And once again, notice that I kind of stuck it up on a little bluff to create some interest. And you can see I'm working on the track, and I know that I've got to get it down to what I'm beginning to create as kind of a switching yard to support the industries in this neighborhood. So all of that's got to be refined, and that's the general place that it's going to go to. The next structure that I'm going to be looking for a home is this refinery. And the reason I kind of created this canal dock harbor scene was we'll have boats and stuff going on here. You'll see this come to life, but you can see again, I know it needs some track, and it'll probably need a couple, one for empties and one for loaded oil, tanker cars coming in. And something that I need to point out that's going to reoccur is I'm using what we might call used equipment. This is stuff that Ed has picked up from various sales and estate layouts he buys out. And this is all used stuff that he's brought in. So it isn't, he certainly said you're welcome to do or buy or need. Anything you need we'll get. But from a budget point of view, we're trying to use stuff that he already has. And I really don't have the time and energy to sit and glue a bunch of this stuff together. So these finished products, particularly when they're nice, really help me get this thing going. You'll see a lot of this. Now, nothing tricky here. I've created these piers and walls, and don't make this hard. Basically, if you see here, I just take a stick. Gotta watch my camera here so I know you can see what I'm doing. Take a stick, glue a little something on that you like for a texture on the wall or pier, and then you can just see this one's got brick in it. This is going to be not seen except these little piers. These are like this that have been weathered with different colors to make it look rusty and old. This one I did kind of a concrete wall thing with, you can do that with some concrete colors. This one's a little fancier, but this is typical on a lot of piers. Got some protective railing, and the rest of these just kind of shaded, no right or wrong here. And they'll look fine, and let me show you how it works. Here's what we got. This makes a nice look. That right up here. We're going to put this one over here. This is going to be kind of an old iron fence. This is going to be a junkyard in the end. This is going to be its dock here. Nothing too fancy. these are going to be along the canal, one on both sides. And this is going to be a wall that I put up here by the cement plant to make it a little more interesting. And this one will go and be kind of a loading dock. I've got to detail this out, but this will be kind of a loading dock for loading, unloading some fuel barges. And this one, I told you didn't do much because I'm going to turn around and put it here. You're never going to see it. And that's it. We'll go in for a closer look here. Hang on. Now, I won't do the water until way late in the game here, but you can kind of see this makes for a nice look. I've got to tie it all in. And like here, this is going to be a junkyard, scrap yard that loads barges with scrap. And you can see I'm trying to figure out a way to get my scrap cars in there and out of there. And this will give you kind of an idea of what I'm shooting for here on this kind of waterfront scene. Still a lot of work here, but you'll get the general idea. And what it's done is it's kind of secured this area. But the challenge is that as this thing swings on towards what I call the second module, which is going down to the city, I've got a lot of challenges here. I have to try to make this look like one layout, and I've also got to fill it up in such a way it doesn't look like just a string of buildings. So we'll see how it goes. I'm going to take a minute to show you one of the consequences of my kind of freelance, no-plan approach to modeling these layouts. I see a lot of people work on these track diagram plans, and I just have always had problems with it because I don't know exactly where I'm going, but to me, a track plan traps you into conditions that you have to satisfy, whereas in this case you can see that I find buildings and things and then I try to find a home for them and then supply the track. So I never quite know where I'm going until I get there. And here's a good example of my problems when you do this. I like my little cement plant up on the bluff, and I got the track work done here that's going to take it. And again, the thing is that I need to get it down to the regular yard or the place where all the other switching and stuff occurs. And the buildings are going to have to kind of be blended in with this, but I've already tested that. And you also can see that I added this. It's going to be a feature. These are a couple pieces Ed had that I really liked. And I needed to put a siding in on this kind of chemical, well, I think it's a gas plant or something. But I need a little siding, which I never would have thought of until I saw it and said, we need one right here. You know that I already did the refinery, and I've got the track work there. There's going to be 2 sidings for cars. But going back to my cement plant, and if you look over here, you can see my scrap yard and my access to the pier. All of this is coming down into what some would consider a mess. Now, this area down here is kind of the end of the industrial thing. I built this module diorama, and I did this to kind of create a little different approach. Remember, this thing's going to run forever. I'm trying to break up that as much as I can. So I put this little thing together that's going to fill in some space, add some industrial complex. And it also had the opportunity to require some rail service. But I got the cement plant route coming down here. I've got the scrapyard coming into here. And I like this building, and I thought I might be able to squeeze in a couple cars and a little interest here coming off of this kind of the main line coming into this area. And I'm not quite sure how that's going to work, because I got a lot of switches, but I'm going to have to kind of figure out who gets what and where goes where. But I'll show you when I figure it out. Well, a pleasant Sunday afternoon, and we've got this track plan figured out, and it's quite a bit going on here, but it does serve the goals of taking care of the cement plant, the scrap yard, and I was able to squeeze in a little track for this building here in the foreground and still get the little gas plant connected. And as I indicated, I also was able to get some track rights back down here to a couple of these buildings. My friends have a tendency to tease me, but you'll find that I usually pack quite a bit in. And density, if you look at Siouxtown, my HO layout, you'll notice that, as one of my friends says, there's no room left to put anything. And in this case, it won't be quite that bad, but I'll continue to put a lot of detail and a lot of interest and see if we can't make it a pretty good looking layout. Well, as I've alluded to many times in these videos, my freelance style does create some dilemmas sometimes, and this bridge is a problem. And I didn't want to spend $23 to come up with a girder bridge that might fit, so I just decided I'd kind of build my own. Let me show you how that works. So I lifted off of its cover here. It's not easy to see, but it's works real well, and I'm just going to put it right down here. Then I'll put another one down here. And I can drop these two basic foundations for my bridge over, and it'll stay. And I can check the width here, and I need to go a little wider. And I want enough width here that when I do this, the track will just drop right in like that. Then I cut some little cross braces, and I will sit those along. Then I use some girder bridge panels that I picked up. I pick up a lot of stuff at train store or at train shows, and Ed gets in a lot of estate stuff. And there's always a lot of, I call it junk stuff that isn't real sellable. Ed always sells it pretty cheap, but you get a lot of this kind of stuff, and I throw it in the junk box. And Shazam, this is what you get. And Shazam, I think that'll solve my problem. Well, I ran into a problem when I started pouring the realistic water in the canal. I didn't realize that cutting out the canal had weakened the edges of the canal. When I started to pour the realistic water, the weight started to sag the bottom and cause the canal sides to droop. So I went to Hobby Lobby. They had a sale, and what you see here is what I'm going to call a canal insert. And I basically measured it and checked it, and I'm going to put this in that slot in the space and build around it, and then I'm assured that it's all level and it'll hold water and all that stuff. So that's kind of what's going on there. Now I'm going to give you a couple of short clips here as I progress on putting this insert and replacing the old canal thing. I've salvaged a bunch of the piers and docks from the old setting, so you can see that it'll go back together pretty well, and you can't see it well, but the level calls that straight and flat, and that's important when it comes to pouring the water. The first pour of realistic water looked great. When it sets up and dries, I'll put on a second coat to add some depth. The track is in place, but I leave it loose to allow for them to adjust the final connections of the three sections into one layout. Notice the mirror I put under the bridge to add a little depth to the canal. The last job was to add the lighting. There are 16 street lights and lamps and 7 lit structures on this section. I think lighting adds a lot to a layout. Well, we've installed the last section of the layout, and I am pleased with the way the three sections have blended into one layout. But we can't explain the last part of this shot. Both Ed and I measured the space for this layout to be 18 foot, but when we brought the last section in to be installed, the benchwork was only 16 foot long. So we had to cut a hole in the room next door and slide it 2 foot through to make it fit. The last thing to be done was to install a reversible commuter train track along the back of the layout. This is an isolated section of track that we built, soldered together, and dropped into place as one piece on the layout. It has its own power source and circuitry. The control panel was built by Lee Williams. He does a lot of engine repair work for Ed and Whistle Stop. Lee used a YouTube video called Automatic Reversing Relay for Model Trains, and it was done by Ray Wilkins, and he used that to help build this circuit panel. The panel controls the speed of the train, the duration of its stops, and the length of the total time to make its run. A button at the front of the layout will start the sequence, and it runs for 2.5 minutes. I think it adds some interest for viewers. We will have an update when Ed and his staff get trains running. Bye now.